Hop in, boys. Today, we's converting an Ork Trukk for Warhammer 40,000. So round up them nitro squigs and let's do some hobby.
So today I'm converting an Ork Trukk out of the Ridgehauler trailer, a bunch of truck parts I had, and my trusty tools, files, hobby saws, knives, clippers, more files, and a lot of plastic glue, and of course some protection for my hands. So this is the chassis I made from the Ridgehauler trailer. So basically I just cut the axles down so they were less wide, and I made a column out of a piece of bomb and stuck some exhausts and some of the front chassis part from the truck kit. And the crew cabin is mostly the same as the truck, except I cut it down so it's even, because the right side was a bit further out. The driver is pretty much the same as the kit, just with a different head. And the tray, I have cut away half of the front and put a mounting for the big shooter because I want to have the gunner in the back. Then I also used a bit off a plane, I think it's like a custom Mega Blaster head, to make a mount for the wrecking ball. So the wrecking ball itself, I just got a piece of aluminium tube and made kind of a pillar for it so it can sit freestanding. That should slot into the mount and move around if it wants to. The gunner, I've just used some spare Ork Boy bits to make a body for him, and he should just line up to that little mount and sit in the back of the tray. Lastly, the engine, I've just filed it away a bit, took the scoop off and made it so it can connect to the exhaust that I've run underneath the chassis. And then the hood, so I wanted to give this truck a hood, so I used the Battlewagon plow and I just chopped away at it until it somewhat resembles a hood. The grill at the front is from the Ridgehauler trailer, and then some just random glyphs and stuff. So that will sit on top of the engine like so. So it looks like that. I think it's a pretty nice looking alternative model to the normal truck kit. I don't like to have any two vehicles looking the same. And compared to the standard truck, it's around about the same size. So I'm going to spray most of the parts in Wraithbone and some in black. And I'm going to start off with the underbody because that's going to be the easiest thing to do. So I'm going to dry brush most of that in lead belcher. Don't have to be too detailed here because most of the truck is going to be over the top of this. So use the wheel arches, and the engine as well is going to be mostly covered by the hood. Then just to have a little bit of differentiation, I use some Balthazar gold to pick out some different pieces on the engine and the underbody, and yeah, these catalytic converter type looking things, not sure exactly what they are. Decided to do those in Screaming Bell. And some of the parts of the engine as well. Not that you'll actually ever see these. And then I'm going to very thickly coat everything in Agrax Earthshade. I think this works really well for Ork vehicles, especially because it gives it a really greasy look, like it's all been leaking engine oil all over the place and it's sort of pitted and rusted. Then I just use some Necron compound to just give a little bit of an edge highlight, just very lightly. Next I will go and clean up the tyres in Abaddon Black, or I think I ended up using Black Legion for this, to just clean up any of the overspill. And I also dry brushed some Abaddon Black on the end of the exhausts to make it look like soot. Then a couple of little coloured details. I'm going to re-undercoat those in Wraithbone, like this tank and the belt there, and a couple of other little parts that I just want to have a little pop of colour underneath the hood. So then I just use some contrast, so Nasdreg yellow for the tank that sits underneath the engine, and these little, I don't know, oil filters if orcs have such a thing. I'm going to do in Talisar blue, and then the belt I'm going to do in black Templar. So that's the main body. For the tyres, I'm just going to dry brush those in Dawnstone to give them a bit more worn kind of look. Now on for the main body parts, I use Blood Angels red. So for vehicles or things with lots of flat areas, I tend to do the contrast one panel at a time, just to minimize the amount of pooling and streaking that you can get with contrast on these flat panels. So just go through one at a time and cover those. Try not to go over one area too much with the brush, because that's when you can get streaking. Just make sure you get good coverage and there's not any like really deep pools on flat areas where you don't want them. I also find you can do a second layer that's about 50-50 diluted with contrast medium. This will darken down the color. I wanted my Evil Sun's red to be a little bit darker, and it also helps even out some of the sort of uneven colors where it's not completely smooth. So then after that, I go and re-undercoat any of the parts that I want other colors, so metal parts in black and colored parts in Wraithbone, because if you're going to use contrast, it doesn't go well over other contrasts. And then just like the underbody, I am going to do a bunch of metallics, just sort of fairly randomly applying those, mostly lead belcher. So there's a bunch of metal sheets and checker plate and things like that all over this, the front of the grill as well, and the bull bar. So just go through all of those and do those in lead belcher, and the wrecking ball too, the chain and the spikes and anything that you think would be steel or iron. Then to break up the colours, I use some Balthazar gold for some alternate metal pieces. The searchlight I thought could be Balthazar gold, and the alternative parts of the grill. So just go through and paint those, and then also some Screaming Bell for just a little third little colour. And then the same as the underbody, just going to really thickly put some Agrax Earthshade all over that, and then do a little light dry brush of Necron Compound. Now I'm going to add some secondary colours to break up the red, and the main one I use is Nasdreg yellow for that. So things like the lightning bolt and a couple of small plates on the model, going to do in Nasdreg yellow, some of the teeth things on the hood as well. And Apothecary white is the second one, so things like that skull and one of the teeth. I ended up repainting the tooth in metal. And Black Templar for just a couple of other ones, and the jerry can I decided to do in Creed camo. So next up I'm going to use some neutral colors to do the details of the gear stick. So there's some little cords. I use Gore Grunter fur for those, and Wildwood for the bottom part of the gear stick, and then Skeleton Horde for the skull. Next I'm going to use some bright colors to do some of the other details, like the control panel. So it's got a few dials and buttons on it. So Blood Angels red for some of them. I use Warp Lightning for another one of the buttons there. Dark Angels green for some of the little monitor kind of things, and then I end in yellow for the spotlight on the back. I also wanted to have a little bit more detail to just give it a bit more personality, so I drew some flames on the hood of the vehicle. So just hand trace out some squiggly lines, and then I also wanted some checkered patterns as well. So along the side of the tray, I'm going to first undercoat those in Wraithbone, and then for the flames I do those in Nazdreg yellow. Don't have to be too careful going over the red because it doesn't show through if you overspill a little bit. And then I trace some little squares in the side stripes, and then just sort of fill those in alternating patterns in Black Templar. So it's not perfect, but it looks pretty good from a distance, and that's what the flames look like in the end, and that's what the checker pattern looks like. Now the last thing I want to do is use some Steel Legion drab, and I'm going to sort of roughly dry brush this all over all of the parts of the model, mostly on the lower end, just to make it look all dusty like it's been in the desert. Now we get onto the crew, and I use for all my orcs a base coat of Plague Bearer flesh. So this gives a good yellowy green undertone and ties all the orcs together, because I use some different shades on the different orcs to give them some variety. So I put the Plague Bearer flesh down first, and then some I use Creed camo on, and you can dilute this with some contrast medium to vary the intensity of it, and then Militarum green for the other crew member. Now I use a lot of dull colours to do their clothing, so I've got some Agros Dunes here for one of the guys' pants, and some Wildwood for the boots and leather straps and things. So I use some Snakebite leather to give a different shade of brown for the straps that are strapping his foot onto the accelerator, and some Black Templar. Just a different mishmashed variety of neutral colours for all of the parts of their clothes. I use Black Templar for the guy's hair squig as well, so that will run nicely into the creases of the hairs. And then to give them some Evil Sun's colours, I use Blood Angels red to do some of their armour plates. So these guys are pretty lightly armoured, but they have some helmets, and the gunner has a few different plates. So one on his shoulder, and he's got like a little back plate thing here. So just do those in Blood Angels red to tie them together. Also the casing for the big shooter I decided to do in that red as well. So just go through that, and then I use the same kind of metallic colours as I have with other parts of the model to just pick out a bunch of different metal areas. The rims of the goggles, there's lots of little studs and chains and little bits and pieces on all these orc models, so just pick those out. With Lead Belcher first, the big shooter 2 is going to be mainly Lead Belcher. Then to give it a bit of a sort of ramshackle look, I like to have those different alternating metals as well. So the Balthazar Gold for just some little pieces there, and some Screaming Bell maybe for the safety harness clip thing that's holding his harness on, and even some Retributor armor for a couple of small pieces there, and then thickly cover all that with Agrax Earthshade to shade it and give it a grimy look to everything. So just get that all over all the metal parts. Next for the orcs' mouths, so for their gums I do them in shyish purple, so just pick out any of the gum kind of areas. And then their tongues I do with some watered down Blood Angels red, so it gives it a more pinkish hue than the deep red. Also do his eyes of any of the models that have their eyes uncovered. Then I use Skeleton Horde to do their claws and fangs. Make sure it sort of pools in the corners of that to make it look sort of plaquey. And then Talisar Blue, I decided to do the lenses of the driver's goggles, sort of like a reflection in the desert sky kind of look. Now it is onto the Squig, and I was inspired to give the Squig a Yoshi kind of colour scheme and add him into the passenger side of the truck. So Warp Lightning for most of his skin, just put it on nice and thick, Then his little knobbly bits I did in Blood Angels red to sort of simulate Yoshi's little red parts. The underside I did some watered down Reekland flesh shade just to give it a bit of shading underneath. And then for his mouth, so Carroburg Crimson for his gums, so just like really thickly put that in, and it runs into the corners and gives a nice sort of pinkish red gummy look. Then I do Skeleton Horde for his claws and fangs, and some Talasar Blue for his eyes, and that's everything done. So I just got to assemble. So I've got the chassis, and first thing I do is pop the engine in. Use super glue to connect all these because they're painted. Then I put the crew compartment on, so just make sure it's nice and firm there. Pop the driver in. The driver's a bit sort of loose. You have to sort of push him forward to make sure his steering wheel's connected, and then you put the tray on, and that sort of sandwiches the driver into place. So next up I'll put the wrecking ball on. I just decided to put it on a bit of an angle, look like it's swinging, and then pop the hood on, make sure it's resting nicely and fairly evenly. Then the gunner, so just make sure he's lined up to the little mounting there. And then I should have probably put the squig in a bit earlier because now there's a bunch of pieces in the way, so just very carefully pop him so he looks like he's about to jump off and go chase something. So to finish it off, I made a scenic base and I magnetized it so I can take it off if anyone complains that it's giving some kind of advantage. So that's the truck done. Really happy with how it turned out. It was pretty much exactly how I envisioned it in my head, but I didn't really have a plan. But that's sort of the Orky way, and now he's ready to go off and drop the boys into battle.